Hello and welcome to Tony's Bonsai. In today's video I'm going to be doing bits and bobs of jobs on some of my trees and also giving you a few updates, and I'm starting with this oak. This is a tree I grew from seed 15-16 years ago, and I repotted it just a couple of weeks ago because it wasn't doing well. It had a really poor year last year and it's alive but only just. You can see here it's beginning to produce leaves, but they're absolutely tiny for an oak. And I think the problem is the tree's energy stores are being spread between too many buds. So for today, I think the best thing I can do is remove some of the buds off the tree to give it a chance to put what remaining energy it has into leaves like this. I'm going to go harder on some branches than others, but this is a good example here. We've got this nice green bud appearing, but beyond that, there's so many tiny little buds that it just can't supply energy to all of them. So this is a good example where I'll actually cut back all the way into there. The work I'm doing here is not based on any knowledge particularly. This is just my intuition and kind of what I think's happening to the tree. And I think if I just leave it with doing nothing, I don't think anything's going to happen and it's going to die. So I'd rather be proactive. This is one that's harder to know what to do with. There's the beginnings of buds all the way up here. There's probably 30 or 40 buds just on this small section. And I can't have them all. I think what I'd rather do is, there's a little bud behind there. I think I'll just cut back to that one bud. In many ways, it's quite hard to know what to do for the health of the tree. And sometimes you just have to go on a bit of a wing and a prayer and make a decision, and the tree makes it or the tree doesn't. But you've got to go down swinging, at least have a go. Especially when you're of the mind that I am with this tree, that to do nothing is not an option. I could have put it out there and asked on, Facebook, on Bonsai UK, what their suggestions would be, but in reality, I don't think what anyone could say could change my mind on this. It just feels like this has to be done. Quite good fun, actually. It'd be even more fun if there were loads of nice buds on it that I could be certain were going to sprout out and live. But that's the nature of bonsai, I suppose. Sometimes we just have to sort of take a chance, go for it, and leave it to the bonsai gods. Apart from what I've just done, I don't think there's really anything else I could do for this tree now. Just keep it well watered, try and look after it, keep it in the shade, and hopefully this tree will now have the energy to grow some leaves and push the remaining buds. First update is this little Christmas spruce that I bought for £10 this winter. I saw Corinne at Greenwoods working on the same kind of tree and I thought I'd have a go. I was quite happy with how it ended up looking, but it's definitely struggled. But there are signs of life. Up here at the top of the tree, the buds are opening, which is great. But this is where I would expect it to be the healthiest because they're an apically dominant tree. The problems generally are further down the tree, like this branch. It's got no buds appearing at all. And then I've got some that are in between. This has got a bud at the end of one branch. And this one here, it's got a bud in there. It's got a bud here and buds on the end. So that one's not doing too bad actually. What I do also have are fresh back buds appearing from the bases of the branches. And both of these have got no buds on them at all. So obviously the trees thought that branch is dead. Let's send out a new branch. So perhaps I'll just have to work with these new ones in the future, which that's not all bad. Overall, I'm actually quite happy with how this tree's doing. When I'd finished working on it, I didn't really have that high hopes for it. The roots were in very dry soil. I had to take a lot of the roots off, and spruce are very, very touchy. You know, you mess with the roots and they don't like it, they just die. So to see signs of life, and I think there'll definitely be stuff for me to work on in the future. This might not be the eventual structure, but I'm sure I'll be able to get a tree out of it. And for a tenner, that's not bad. In contrast to that previous spruce, this Norway spruce is doing really well. It's full of nice, fresh green growth. Every single branch, let me have a look. Yeah, every single branch has sent out new growth this spring, which tells me the tree's doing well, it's nice and healthy. And my job going forward is going to be compacting this and getting it back. But that's not a job I will do now. I want this to have a good healthy year, get lots of energy, and then I can take a look at this next spring and start compacting it inwards. Yeah, really happy, and I'm loving that deadwood. I loved it when I did it, and I'm still really happy with it. I'm sure the edge of this bark here is going to start rolling over. That'll look quite nice, and I'm sure that'll happen this autumn. But the rest of it up here, I think it looks good. This is growing really healthy, which is the main thing. That's going to become the new leader. And just overall, this is the kind of result I'd wanted. I don't think you've ever seen this tree before. It's some kind of juniper. I bought it a couple of years ago and it's never been healthy. And last year I thought it had died, so I did a repot of it in the winter. Certain areas have come back to life, but there's a lot of dead on this tree, and I think I need to just cut some of that off. I've built a fairly decent structure actually within this tree, so it'll be a shame to lose sections of it, but you know, what can you do? There doesn't appear to be any life at all on this branch, so I can take that off. Again, this one, there's nothing there. There's some bits of green in this one. That might be worth keeping. But all this section up here off the main, and this all comes off that main trunk, that seems to be dead. So let's get rid of that. That's not good. Let's get rid of that. And then, seeing as this bit looks quite green and alive, I'm wondering if it's worth even bothering with this stuff here. Let's get rid of it. There we go. So we're more or less healthy and alive and green. Now I just need to work out what I can do with this tree going forward in terms of design once I get it back to decent health. I'm a bit surprised. I didn't realise this was one of the ones I'm so allergic to, but oh, this is a nightmare, this one for me. Once they start itching me like this, I end up being brutal with them. Like, this'll teach you. This'll teach you for stinging me. I'm going to cut all your branches off. Right, so I think if you notice these stumps, I've left them a bit longer so that I can turn them into gins. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm wondering if this front one here might have the potential to add some nice shari down the front if I just rip it down like that. There we go. Look at that, lovely. Very nice. And the gin above it now, when I remove the bark, that should be quite natural. I've yet to do any proper carving, apart from just messing about with chainsaws and stuff. I've not done any with a die grinder, but the more time goes on, if I'm honest, the more I like this kind of more natural way of creating deadwood, using pliers. Like that. use the old crushing technique. Just crush it. And the bark should then just strip off like that, which it does. That's those two done then. They look really good. Very natural, realistic. Just this sort of stump up here. I could cut this flush, but again, I don't think I will. I think what I'll do is just strip the bark off that little section. Like that, and then pull it down like that, down the trunk of it. Might be a bit too much for some people, all this bark torn off, but I like the look of that. You know, the way it comes down and strips off. To me, it kind of tells a story. You know, this branch snapped, ripped the bark off. What do you want? I'm happy with that. Looks a lot more healthy now. Now I've cut all that dead stuff off. And I think it's quite interesting with that dead wood and the shirey coming down the trunks. I just need this to have a good summer now. Put on some new growth, grow healthy, and, you know, maybe there's the start of a bonsai there. Now for a few of my more adventurous sort of bending trees. I really went for this one. I did this over the winter, I think. I can't recall when or why. But it's growing quite healthy. It's doing okay. It's got a couple of dead branches, which I'll remove. And I'll get that wire off in another couple of months. Here's a little Scots pine that didn't make it. I don't know why. I presume, I mean, it came as bare rootstock, so I had to pot it up. And the combination of that, removing a few roots, adding the wire, putting the crazy bends in, you know, it was too much for it. Would have been a really interesting tree if it had made it too, because I was really happy with the movement and the bends I got into it. But at the very minimum, learning, practice, so it was not a waste of time. And at the same time that I did that pine, I also worked on this spruce. I'm a little surprised this is still alive. It's not super healthy, but it's got buds. It's coming out. It will live this. And if it survives and holds this shape, it'll certainly have an interesting trunk to it. I'm quite surprised by this blue cedar. I did not think this one was going to make it at all. It's an exposed root, so it's planted in this long, like, can. And over the years, I'll be removing the soil and exposing the root base. So it should be nice, and it's really healthy. It's come out with lots of new buds, and that's doing well. This tree, I'm really surprised is alive. It's a cedar of Lebanon. The roots were terrible, so I really went to town on them. I was sure that I'd killed it. Now, I wired the trunk a bit, but it's come out in new green growth, so that's fantastic. And it just goes to show you can never tell which trees are going to live and which ones are going to die. I want to end this video by picking your brains and really finding out what the heck I can do with this Mughal pine. I'm clueless. I've got no idea. I bought this tree last spring. I repotted it. I removed one major branch and it very nearly died. All of these branches were full of needles and it dropped everything. So I've just been watering it, looking after it, and this spring it's kind of come alive. But what do I do with it now? Where do I go from here? Is this a tree that just has to go in the garden as just as a nice ornamental plant, or is there any potential to make bonsai out of this? If anyone knows the variety, that'd be a great start. I shouldn't think it's too hard to identify because it's got these wonderful orange, I don't know what they are like pollen sacs or something like that. The green candles are coming out from the centre. Obviously, they're not super long, so I've just left them to grow. Up here, they're a little longer. So it's a lovely plant, and it's got a really nice base too. So it's got this quite nice chunky base there that comes up, kind of moves across here, goes up to this one. So I thought there was some good potential in it. This is where I made a major cut there. There was a large branch and I've removed that. That's beginning to heal. In fact, I must have removed two looking at it, because I removed that one as well. That's actually healing better than the other one. So that's rolling over and repairing. But what can I do with the rest of the branches? I mean, they're so long, there doesn't seem to be any back budding on any of these branches. Although there is a bit up there. I have got the odd bit of back budding, for example, there on this skinny branch, there's a bit there. But there's none on any of the thicker branches. And there's just very little, they're all completely bare. So I know I can't just cut back with a pine. If you cut back, they just die if there's no green left on. If you're feeling that surge running through your body to type, you shouldn't have repotted it in January. You should repot Mughal pines in the autumn. All fire, I know that now. It's what do I do from here going forward with this? You know, and if I have to plant it round at my parents' house in the garden just as an ornamental shrub, you know, that's not bad. Except I pay 30 quid for this, so, you know, I'd have to charge him. As always, thanks for joining me. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.